Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm Finlo Costain. Today's headlines. Former Defra Secretary George Eustice calls for native breed funding to celebrate the King's coronation. Red Tractor has been referred to the Advertising Standards Authority by environmental charity River Action. And Worldwide Cuisine serves up new opportunities for red meat and dairy. The former Environment Secretary, George Eustice, is calling for a fund of £10 million to protect rare and native breeds as part of the coronation celebrations for King Charles. Mr. Eustice has described native breeds as a Noah's Ark of genetic resources. I asked him what that means.
Well, I think as we've had more commercial livestock breeds, and actually a departure from the idea of a breed at all and just development of commercial livestock, we've been relying on an ever decreasing pool of genetic material to make the modern animal that's used in commercial farming. And it's always the case that occasionally you will get maybe a problem with lameness that develops, or there will be a disease challenge, or you may want to start to have an animal that could be more suitable for more regenerative grazing types of production rather than a feedlot system on cattle. And actually you need to be able to reach back into the genetic resources that are held in all of those native breeds. They are pools of genetic diversity. And my view is that life itself on this planet depends on genetic diversity for its resilience. In nature, in the natural world, and in livestock as well. When you get a particular challenge, often the solution is there, tucked away in a gene, sitting somewhere in maybe a rare breed or less commercial breed of animal, and you need to be able to draw on that. So it's a very important resource, and if we neglect it, then we are damaging our ability to be resilient as an industry.
So it's not just about protecting those native breeds for the sake of it. It's actually looking at being able to draw out traits and breed those traits into more modern commercial livestock in order to get that benefit.
That's right. And there's been some evidence, for instance, that some native breeds of cattle have perhaps a slightly higher propensity to be able to avoid or resist bovine tuberculosis. And there's been some quite interesting work about genetic selection for bovine animals that might have some natural resistance to TB. And we need to be able to recognize that some of these native breeds, because they've evolved on this island over hundreds or thousands of years, that they actually do possess genes that are a distant memory, if you like, of challenges that might have been encountered before, that might be a challenge and encountered again in the future. And they offer the solution. And if we lose them, when they're lost for good.
And thinking about the work that you've been doing, that the government's been doing on sustainable agriculture, particularly when you were Secretary of State, I'm just wondering how important these native breeds and native genetics are in helping to deliver more sustainable and regenerative land use.
Well, I think very important, because my view is, and there's a big debate that was raging, in Defra during my time, and there was a school of thought from, some scientists that said, if you want to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions and help the planet, you basically need to have livestock that are reared very intensively and effectively to kill them as quickly as possible so that they emit less methane. I have to say, I never found that a very endearing vision for agriculture. And I had a different view, which is that actually we need to allow the cycle of life to complete. And that means embracing more regenerative, perhaps more extensive forms of livestock agriculture, where we perhaps go back to breeds and genetic traits that lend themselves to pasture-based livestock production, with less intensive inputs from manufactured feeds, much more ability to turn grass into meat. And if you do that, then you can get your herbal lays, and you can get livestock back on the lowlands, and you can get proper rotation on soil again, all of which actually is quite crucial to our endeavours to see a recovery in nature and in biodiversity. So It's a big debate that's going on. I know where I stand on that, which is that no, we shouldn't be having ever more intensive systems and trying to kill animals as quickly as possible. We actually should go back to something more extensive. And pasture-based livestock, I think, has got a really important role to deliver some of our environmental outcomes.
And in terms of your vision there, what do you think that means in terms of the supply chain? Does the supply chain remain broadly as it is at the moment, or do you see a shortening of supply chains between the farm and the customer?
Well, I think we've seen in recent decades a growing interest in food provenance. And one of the things I'm suggesting with this new Coronation Fund on native breeds, for instance, is you could develop a brand around the breed of animal. It's been done to some extent with the Aberdeen Angus, although they're often dairy crosses that you'll see advertised in the shops. Herefords have done it a little bit. But actually, the irony is that under the old EU protected food name systems, you could protect West Country lamb or West Country beef, irrespective of what breed of animal it was. But for people who really understand meat and recognise meat quality, the discerning connoisseur of meat, if you like, they will actually be able to understand the eating quality of different types of breed of animal. And so whether it's South Devons or the Ruby Reds or Herefords, I think we could really develop a brand around the provenance of those breeds rather than a geographic provenance, which is what happened previously.
And thinking about the Coronation Fund in particular that you've proposed, why £10 million and what would that be used to fund?
Well, if I'm honest, £10 million isn't the product of any particular calculation. It's just that I know that Defra have a significant underspend at the moment on their agricultural budget. That budget's ring-fenced. And I always had the view that as we rolled out the future policy, yes, uptake on things like the sustainable farming incentive might be slower initially, and that as you did that, then space would open, headroom in the budget, to be able to do other things such as the animal welfare policies, the animal health pathway, for instance. You would have scope to be able to invest in new housing for pigs and poultry, to upgrade and modernise some of those so you get a higher welfare outcome. And also you'd have the opportunity to do these rare breeds. So I've said 10 million because I know that there's a tendency in Whitehall for the Treasury to say, well, OK, let's do something to keep George Eustice quiet, but make it a pilot scheme that's a few £100,000 instead. And I'm trying to say that I want this to be a little bit more ambitious than that and for it to be a multi-annual scheme that runs year to year. And
do you think it will happen?
Well, I think in the year of the King's coronation, given that King Charles spent a lifetime championing native breeds and rare breeds, there will be a lot of appetite to do things that mark the coronation. This is a really important time. And yes, people can do, gardens and other things that mark the coronation. But I think there's something quite powerful in setting up a scheme that is in an area that's dear to his heart. And this is the year to do it. There's room in the budget in Defra. There's headroom to do this. The Agriculture Act provided for it and envisaged a scheme of this sort. And in the year of the King's coronation, there could be no better time to move this forward.
That was former Environment Secretary George Eustice. I'll be talking to Mr. Eustice in more detail in next week's Farmgate podcast, due out on Friday, the 28th of April. More about this and our other headline news on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back on Monday. Thanks for watching.